In the novel The Joy Luck Club, the author Amy Tan discusses leaving her home in China and coming to America. The quote, "You can leave home all you want, but home will never leave you," by Sonseria Tate applies to this novel. You see, Tan leaves China, but throughout the novel, the Chinese culture of her family is prevalent and shines through life in America. So Jingmi, she hid from herself. She wasn't really knowing who she truly was. She felt out of place. Then she realized she was kind of like her mom. Jingmi Wu is her full name. She wasn't hiding anymore. She saw who she was. She saw her true identity. She realized no matter how far from China she was, she's Chinese. That's her culture. She lived in a cultured home, and it always reminded her of her roots. One thing that Jingmi Wu said was that America was where all my mother's hopes lay. She'd come here in 1949 after losing everything in China: her mother and father, her family home, her husband and 2 daughters, twin baby girls. But she never looked back with regret. There were so many ways for things to get better. So basically, Jingmi Wu realizes, America's kind of a fresh start for them. Even though it's not her home, she has no idea where she is. She doesn't feel like she's a part of it. She realizes, her mom seeing that there's more to America than just a random place. This is where they're going to start over. So Jingmi Wu, she felt like she didn't belong, like an outsider, and her parents felt the same. But she knew this was her new home. But even though she was in America now, China was always where she would come from. And so that's why I believe that quote applies, because the quote, "You can leave home all you want, but home will never leave you." She left China. She left and came to America where she knew nothing. However, when she came to America, she realized it was a new start, and her culture never left her. She always knew she was Chinese. She was from China, so that never left her. So how I've grown this semester in learning, I've grown this semester as a learner in more than one way. I've become dedicated, focused, and I've begun to become more comprehensive when reading things. I can read more into it. The most important idea or argument that was put into this semester's discussions, it was generated when the question about children on the spectrum came up, about autism. I believe that, the question was mainly, do children on the spectrum, do they need to be in special needs classes? Do they need to be put in advanced classes? I think the question was not irrelevant, but I think it has nothing to do with them being on the spectrum where they should be placed. So to me, that was really important, because I feel like a lot of people have really different viewpoints on autism, it being special needs, and children on the spectrum, what their capabilities are. So I believe it's important to discuss, because children on the spectrum, they're not always understood with their capabilities, their weaknesses, their strengths, and so on from that. Because when you think about an autistic child, you think, oh, they have special needs, they're not as capable. However, that's not so much the case. When I read it, I argued that not all children on the spectrum are the same. Many have talents in academics, while others, might struggle, just like children who are not on the spectrum do. It raised a lot of questions for many people as to, how do the minds of autistic children function? What's different about them? I think, when you take a close look at one of the children, you realize that they're actually bright. They're, more often than not, they're actually even more intelligent than kids who are not on the spectrum. Their minds work insanely hard. They're very, very smart. And I think that most people see mental illness as like a disability. Like, they can't do this because they're special needs, or because they have autism, they're not as smart as my kid. But it's not true. Let's see. I believe that it also depends on the child. Kids who aren't on the spectrum, for example, you have kids that are advanced, you have kids that that struggle in school, they might need to take remedial math. They might need to, go a little slower, be in classes that are more at their pace. And you have kids that, are taking college foreign languages the first year of high school and middle school. So you never know. I mean, it really depends on the child. Nobody's brain is the same. I think it's the same with kids on the spectrum. Even though they're on the spectrum, I don't think they should be viewed as a group or a kind of person. I think that's kind of closed-minded because, they're all individual people. And so I think, they all have different strengths and weaknesses and capabilities and talents. And I think that, that should depict what kind of class they're in, not, well, they have autism, they need to be in special needs, or they have autism, they're really intelligent, let's put them in advanced. I don't think it should be as a group. That's like saying, this kid speaks Spanish, they're going to do great in Spanish class. They might not be as good at grammar in Spanish as someone who speaks English. You never know. And so I think that is kind of a closed-minded way to view it. I think it should be individually based on the child. I just don't think they should be labeled. I think it should all be based on their academic achievements as to what category they fall into, not as the category of mental illness. Most people will disagree with me, and they'll say that children with autism, it is a mental illness, therefore they should be classified into a group. And I mean, that is understandable. It is an illness. However, it's not debilitating. It's not anything that's going to stop them from doing things we do. Children with autism, they're still children. They're bright. They're intelligent. They have hard times, in crowds or with socializing or with too many lights or loud noises, but it has nothing to do with how their brain functions. They're just high-functioning children. I don't think that should affect someone's viewpoint on where they should be placed academically. So yeah, they're bright, intelligent. Most people would be surprised to find out that they are bright and intelligent because the first assumption people make is that they're going to be slower, they're not going to be able to hold on a conversation, they're not going to know what they're learning. But I in my argument, I really encouraged people, like, sit down with someone who has autism, start a conversation with them, get to see who they are, how their brain works. So I think, people would be really surprised to find out you can have a conversation with someone on the spectrum. They are quite intelligent. Autism is different from Asperger's. However, I have a cousin who has Asperger's, and, a lot of people in school said he was, slow. And for instance, he had C's and F's in high school, but I believe that just because of that doesn't mean he's not going to go anywhere in life because he wasn't good in school. He's actually really talented at working on cars. He's very, very smart when it comes to cars. And it's the same with autistic people. They might be slower in some areas. They might have a harder time with some things, but they are still talented people, and they still do have brains that work just like everyone else's. They might just be a little more high functioning. So that was my argument, and for me that was really important because you got a lot of different viewpoints on a topic that was, pretty, something that a lot of people could debate on. So in essence, this is a topic I can use outside of the four walls of a classroom, because by incorporating a topic in which I'm passionate about, even if I wasn't passionate, for instance, this is something that will help me develop my discussion skills, my debate skills, bring them into my life as a college student. It is necessary to communicate important issues like this one. In college, you have a lot of debates, you have a lot of different opinions, and debate skills, they're going to help me grow in my social dynamic as well as my academic dynamic. That was one of the things I learned. A lot of other things I learned was I learned many things as well on literary devices. For me, I learned a lot of things on imagery and how much imagery actually keeps me intrigued, and now I'm better at comprehending things. So overall, the course has taught me many important things that have helped me grow as a student and as a young adult. Thank you so much. Have a happy summer.